What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Graduated and Grown podcast. It's your girl Ariane here, back on the mic. And in today's episode, we are going to basically talk about why your 20s matter and how to make the most of them now. And this episode is actually based off of the book by Dr. Meg Jay, who wrote the book, The Defining Decade. So a lot of the information, well, actually, literally 99% of the information in this episode is from the book. I'm going to talk about what I learned and how it applied to my personal life and just share some key findings from the book that I think is really important for anyone between the ages of like 21 and 26. Just people that are like out of college and still kind of adjusting to life, but this is still really applicable to those of you guys that are in your later 20s, because just because you're 29, it doesn't mean that you have life figured out. And of course, I just want to say this book is not going to give you the blueprint on how to, win at life, but it's really, really good in teaching you how to make your 20s matter and what some best practices are for just having the best set of 20s that you can. So this is really, really exciting. I read The Defining Decade back in spring or summer of 2020, so during the quarantine. And again, it was really good. I think you guys are definitely going to enjoy. And I would honestly suggest to take some notes while this episode is going on, just because there are so many different points that you are going to want to remember. But that's enough of me blabbing. Let's get into the topic of the week. And then we're going to talk about, are our 20s the defining decade? And if so, how can we make them matter? Welcome to Graduated and Grown, a podcast that's focused on helping you and me overcome the struggles of adulting. Let's have some fun yet honest conversations about life once you're graduated and grown. All right, so for this week's topic of the week, we are going to keep it kind of short because this episode is going to be kind of long just because there's a lot of information. But anyway, this week I want to talk about Queen Chloe Bailey. Now, if you guys don't know who Chloe Bailey is, she is half of the sister duo Chloe and Halle. Guys, they are so talented, and I've known about Chloe and Halle probably since high school. I think one of my really good friends used to watch their YouTube channel and she used to talk about them all the time. I personally didn't watch them. Weren't they on like they were on some type of like American like talent show. They didn't win, but they got a lot of recognition from it. Then they went on tour with Beyonce. And that's when I was like, oh, wait, shoot, who is Chloe and Halle? And then I feel like I really got acclimated to them when they were on Grownish. I think that's when I started listening to their music and checking out their social media. Since the moment that they went on tour with Beyonce, I actually think they just started blowing up. More and more people started listening to them, and their reach became global. I really love how normal Chloe and Halle are. Like, they literally seem like they could have been my neighbors who just so happened to get famous. But anyway, we're talking about Chloe today, and Chloe is the oldest one. I think she's my age, so she should be 22 or 23. The reason why I want to talk about her this week is because she has been kind of in and out of like the social media headlines just for the stuff that she posts on her Instagram. Now, personally, I don't see anything wrong with it. Like, I'm literally going to pull it up right now. I think that she looks good. I think it looks like she's having a good time, which I feel like is super important. Chloe is young. She's living her best life. And I love the fact that her and Halle now have separate accounts, because I think it's going to help us get to know them separately. I honestly don't know much about them separately. I just kind of know what I've seen in interviews and on their YouTube channel. But I think with them having their own separate accounts, we're going to see like, okay, Chloe is the more edgy one, even though we kind of knew that. And Halle obviously is younger, but she's sweet. I just think it's really, really cool. And if you guys didn't know, basically she was in the social media headlines because a lot of people were kind of, and it wasn't a lot of people, let me take that back, but some people were kind of body shaming Chloe, making comments about her body, saying it was inappropriate, saying she was trying to like sexualize herself. Some people were even saying she was trying to do like this good girl gone bad facade like Janet Jackson did, I guess. But, Chloe got on live and said, guys, this is literally me. She went on to say that she had a personal Instagram that only like her friends and family followed. And this is like literally the stuff from that account. And she's like, this is who I am. I'm not trying to do anything. I'm not trying to change my image. I'm finally showing you guys who I am. And she talked about body positivity and how she's like finally comfortable with her body. That literally blew the minds of so many people because when I look at her body, I'm like, girl, she is built beautifully. I think Chloe Bailey is so freaking gorgeous. If I had to choose like a Hollywood best friend, I think Chloe Bailey would be it. She just has amazing vibes, amazing singer, amazing voice, and she just seems like a really, really sweet person. So I don't really understand why people were giving her hate. I think there are a lot of jealous people out there that wish they could be her. But I guess this just reminds me of how annoying it must be to be somebody that's in the public light because you're always going to have people kind of hating on you for everything that you do. And I don't want to compare Chloe Bailey to Charlie D'Amelio, but I will say it's similar. They post one thing and people have to go in their comments and say negative stuff. But at the same time, they also have these huge fandoms of fans that love and support them. So, Chloe Bailey, if you ever listen to this podcast, I just want you to know that I will support you, girl. I am low key trying to turn one of my Instagram pages into your fan page just because I love you. I love what you represent. I love how real you are. I love that you get on Instagram live and just talk with your fans. You are just so relatable, and just know that we got your back and we love you. Okay, y'all, that's enough about Chloe Bailey, but I just want to remind y'all, love your bodies. It's you. Love it. Take care of it. And at the end of the day, you can do what you want with it because I have no authority over your body. All right, guys. So now we're going to move into talking about the defining decade. Now, some of you guys may not have ever heard about this book. And basically, it's a self help book for people that are in their 20s. I mean, the front of the book says it, why your 20s matter and how to make the most of them now. I mean, I can't even come up with a better tagline. She did a really, really great job. And so anytime I say Dr. Meg J, Dr. J, Dr. Meg, I'm talking about the author. Dr. J is a clinical psychologist who has been working with 20 somethings for years. And most of the book is actually her telling stories of different clients that she's had and how she's helped them work through their 20s when it comes to so many different things like not knowing what they want to do, with their career, being stuck in a relationship that they don't want to be in, being stuck in a marriage, not being satisfied with their body or not being satisfied with where they are in life. Like literally any issue that a 20 something runs into, Dr. J covers it. And before we kind of get into the nitty gritty, I just feel like the two main things that I learned were one, why my 20s are important. And I'm not going to give you other reasons. And then two, just the importance of starting on your life now, even though you don't have it all figured out. And not waiting until you're 35 when life is even more complicated and you have so much more on your plate. And I feel like that's the underlying theme of the book. Start on your life now. Do not wait. And so the book is split into 3 sections. The first section is about work, then it's about love, and then the last section is about the brain and the body. So we're going to start off with the work section, which I thought was very, very relevant and a good thing for me to read before I started my job, just because having a full-time job is different from an internship. The stakes are higher, there's a lot more money on the line, and there's new people, new environment. So this book was written before 2012, was published in 2012, and that was literally right around the corner from the Great Recession. Now, if you don't know what the Great Recession is, I guess I'll tell you. So basically, the Great Recession was this huge economic downturn that it was the biggest downturn that we've had since the Great Depression that took place, that was in the 1900s. But yeah, so the Great Recession, I believe, started in December of 2007 and it lasted for almost about 2 years. And it was crazy. And of course, the unemployment rates were high. Many companies weren't hiring. It almost sounds kind of similar to how it is now. So I think it was actually really interesting that I read the book now because we're not in a Great Recession right now, but it's kind of similar. It's still super hard for 20 somethings to find jobs. So I thought that was really interesting how relevant it is right now. But anyway, so she starts off the book basically by telling us the story of a woman named Helen. Now, Helen is a 20 something who was suffering from an identity crisis. And I mean, at this point, who isn't? Like many people, her parents wanted her to follow the pre med and, pledge in a sorority. But that wasn't who Helen was at all. She was more artsy. She hated her science classes and spent most of her time in college doing things that she didn't enjoy. But after 2 years, she was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I'm going to take my life into my own hands. Sorry, parents, I love you, but I need to do what I need to do. So she switched majors and became an art major. So she graduated from college, feeling good. And she was doing freelance photography for a little bit, but for her, that wasn't paying her bills. And she didn't like the unpredictability that was going along with it. So, she stopped freelancing and she just took a random nanny job that paid the bills. And that's what she needed at that point in time. And she was paid under the table. So, that was good for her. So she did the random nanny job for a couple different years. But at the same time, she still didn't know who she was. She was still passionate about photography, but it just didn't seem realistic for her to pursue that as a career. So she told Dr. J, yeah, I'm just waiting for something to happen in my life that will tell me, who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing. And she went on to tell Dr. J that she was pretty comfortable with being in this identity crisis because she thought, oh, yeah, all 20 somethings have an identity crisis, which I feel like it's not a lie. We see it in the movies, we see it in books, or we read it in books, all that stuff. Dr. J listens to what Helen is saying, but she decides that she's going to introduce the idea of identity capital, which she describes as our collection of our personal assets that we create as we grow in life. And so your identity capital can help you get a new job, make new friends, solve problems, even choose which coat to wear, and just so much more. It's kind of like our currency that we use to metaphorically purchase jobs, relationships, and everything else we want. So if you're like Helen and you're waiting for something just to happen in your life, girl, you're going to be waiting for a long, long time. And the thing is, it's actually up to you and me to get our own identity capital. If we already have a little bit, it's up to us to get more of our identity capital. And remember this, yes, our 20s are supposed to be fun and crazy and maybe even wild if that's what you're into, but we're also supposed to be taking control of the reins of our life. And the only way to figure out what to do for your life is to actually do something. And I really, really enjoyed listening to that because I don't think I'm going through an identity crisis right now, but I think I was really lacking the action of taking control of my life. I think there was a point in time where I got really complacent. This was very recent. I got really complacent. I wasn't really doing what I should have done in order to reach my goals. And, it didn't really hit me until I did some self reflection. And I was like, oh, shoot, girl, what are you doing? And so I definitely encourage all of you guys to take some chances. Remember that the highest paying jobs aren't necessarily the best jobs for you. If you're passionate about something, go after it. Now remember that your bills still have to get paid. Please keep that in mind. I don't want you to move to New York City, not knowing anyone, not having anywhere to stay, and you want to pursue your career as a dancer with no plan. Have a plan, but remember that taking chances are so important, and this is our chance to do so. Not saying that our 20s are low stakes, but they're lower stakes than there are when we're 35 and 40. So guys, go out there and get some identity capital. There's so many different ways that you can do that. I was talking with someone recently and they talked about getting a certificate in an area of business that they were interested in, but they weren't necessarily working in. So if that's you, if you're interested in learning more about PR strategy, but you're working in finance, go get a certificate. That's going to be an awesome thing to add to your identity capital list. Or if you're someone that wants to be more social, but you've been struggling with it, put yourself in new situations to make new friends. I don't even know what apps you could use to really make friends nowadays. I think the dating apps do have ways that you can make friends. I think you could turn on a switch. Girl, I don't know. I'm not on dating apps, but I've heard my friends talk about it. So if you want to do that, start talking to some people through social media or hit up an old friend from high school. Go out there, take control of your life. Don't let life just pass you by. Let's not be complacent. Go after what you want. So that's the first chapter of the book. So you read that, you're fired up. You're like, yeah, I'm going to take control of my life. Don't know how, but I'm going to do it. So then she moves into this chapter about weak ties. Now, yes, I think having that set friend group is great and they could be a great resource. But Dr. Meg J also says you need to branch out and meet other people. Having weak ties is sometimes even more important than having strong ties. Now, someone you have strong ties with is someone that you're really close with. Someone like your mom, your sister, your best friend, your brother, your cousin, your college roommate, people that you're really close with, people that you spend a lot of time with. Those are your strong ties. Weak ties are with someone that you don't know all that well, someone that you've met or someone that you're somehow connected to, but again, you don't know them all that well. So your neighbors, your coworkers, your church family, your sweet mate from college, your cousin that lives in Antarctica. So those are your weak ties. And basically, Dr. J was saying that weak ties are like bridges that you can't see all the way across, so you don't know where they might lead, but it could lead to a new job. They could be your referral to that new job or to that new internship. They could help you move to a new city. Shoot, they could help you get a new husband, a new girlfriend, a new boyfriend, whatever it is that you want. Maybe they could even introduce you to a new group of people that could become your friends that are more like you in this current phase of life. And basically, having weak ties helps you grow and change, which I think is so important because you don't want to stay in your little bubble all your life. And in no way, shape, or form is Dr. J or am I saying that you need to forget like your best group of friends and just meet new people. Oh, definitely not. It's still important to have that community and to rely on them. But we're also saying that this is also a great time to meet new people and just get more resources. And of course, we don't want you to do this with the mindset, oh, they're going to help me get this job, yada, yada, yada. Actually create genuine relationships that are doing things that you're interested in. If you're moving to a new city, start talking to new people in that city. If you're interested in working at a PR agency, connect with some people that work at PR agencies on LinkedIn and have some coffee chats with them and get to know them and their jobs a little bit more. Having weak ties is definitely important. And I think it's actually kind of funny. A lot of my random opportunities that I've gotten have been due to my weak ties. And nothing against my strong ties at all. I love you guys, you know this. But it's really funny to see how much power weak ties actually have or could have in your life. And so I think I personally struggle with this, but at the same time I think the pandemic has kind of made me semi good at it. And I'll be the first one to say it can be tiring networking and meeting new people. My social battery is not infinite, even though sometimes I want it to be. I know sometimes I get drained, but at the same time, I literally love people. I love getting to know them more. And I think since the pandemic, that has made it a little easier for me to converse with people. Like I've been in a couple of different situations where I've been in, virtual rooms with people I don't know. And instead of sitting in silence, I'm like, okay, like let's make some shake. Like let's talk about something. So I come up with different questions to ask. But I also think I personally struggle with moving people from weak ties to strong ties. And the pandemic isn't necessarily making that easier for me. So that's definitely something I personally want to work on, especially since I'm preparing to move to a new city. Even though I'm very familiar with the company that I work at, I'm still exposed to a lot of new people. So I'm definitely trying to do better with, making some weak ties and also strengthening those weak ties that I currently have, to bring them closer into my circle. And it's not easy, but I definitely think I can get there. And here's another point. I think weak ties can also expose you to more people that aren't like you. And what's interesting for me, I guess I'll give you a little bit of background. I'm not really acclimated to being in new and diverse environments. So, well, new environments, yes, but diverse environments, not so much. I grew up in a Black community. My neighborhood is, I think, all Black. I went to a Black school from K through 12, and I attended a historically Black university. Now, my only taste of non Black diversity was through my extracurriculars and jobs, and I had a whole bunch of extracurriculars. So, of course, it was not a culture shock for me when I, was outside of my little school, work, church bubble. But I think that background that wasn't all that diverse with various races actually has made me become excited to meet people from different like cultural backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds, just because I love learning about different people. I love learning about, like, oh, what do you do at home? Oh, how do you go about doing this? I just, this is being linked to just the fact that I really do love people. And how much of a people person that I am. So I'm personally going to work on strengthening my weak ties in all areas of my life. I don't really know where I'm going to start, but it's definitely something that I do want to do. And I encourage you guys to do that as well. And then that kind of brings us to our next chapter within the book. And I'm not doing all the chapters because she had quite a few chapters, like 15, and we would literally be here all day for that. But this next chapter is really, really good. So it was called My Life Should Look Better on Facebook. And I think we could like apply that statement to any social media. My life should look better on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter, whatever it is you want to say. And it's very relevant. And I think I kind of struggle with it a little bit. So Dr. J reminds us that our 20s might actually be some of the most confusing and difficult years of our lives, not necessarily the best. We all have different situations. But with the rise of social media, and remember, this book was written in 2012, so that was like the Facebook era. Now we're in like the Instagram and TikTok era. But with the rise of social media, our mental health is starting to suffer even more and more. And Dr. J mentions that, social media was created to be a way of, catching up with people, now turning into a way of keeping up. And I don't know if you guys have seen The Social Dilemma. If you have, you know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, definitely go check it out. They kind of touch on that, how social media is really having a negative effect on our mental health, especially for our young people, like our teenagers. Suicide rates have increased, and that is just so freaking heartbreaking. And I think one thing to remember is that everyone is struggling with something, whether they tell you or not, because no one talks about it in full detail on social media, not even on our Finsta accounts. And I think I kind of talked about this in my Adulting is a Scam episode. If you haven't heard that, go check it out. No one's life is as perfect as it looks on social media. And I'll even say it myself, even when I'm having bad days, I might post something that's, happy and giggly or something like that. But I'll never post on my social media, oh, I hate today. Today was the worst day ever. I hate my life. Like, that's nobody's business other than my own. And remember that all of your followers are doing the same thing. Now, there are some people that are a lot more open than others, but again, nobody is putting all of their life on social media. And I think, when we see our peers getting accepted into their dream schools or working for their dream companies or getting engaged, oh my God, I feel like we start to desire that for ourselves, even though literally before we saw their story, we were super content and happy with our lives. Like, I think that is just so freaking crazy. And another interesting point from the book was like, this is the honest truth. Most people are not going to reach their full potential in their 20s. And that's because these are our formative years. I personally think that our 20s are like the teenage years of adulthood. Like, there's so much that we have to figure out. There's so much stretching and growing that we're going to have to go through. When you were a teen, it was like puberty. Well, this is the puberty version of adulthood. And, sometimes you're going to fail. You're not going to realize that the pimple cream will work on your face, But after you try a couple things and you learn from your mistakes, you'll get there. You'll reach your potential. And in the book, she had a couple stats. And obviously, these are from 2012, but I'm sure they're still around the same numbers. But Dr. J was saying that the median starting salary for college graduates is around $30,000. And then the student loan debt is literally around the same. And then only half of recent graduates work in jobs that require college degrees. So basically, like, half of us went to school, got these degrees, and aren't working in the field that they got their degrees in. So I thought that was really interesting. And, we all have a really long way to get to where we want to go. And we're all going to have completely different paths to get there. Some of us are going to have immediate promotion. Some of us may not get promoted till we're 50. Some of us are going to go off and be influencers and, hit $1 million soon. While it may take me, until I retire to hit a millionaire. And so your path might look completely different from mine. But I think if we both put in the work and do what we need to do, there's a pretty strong chance that both of us will hit our goals. It may not be at the same time, but I believe when you put in work, you will be rewarded for the work that you put in. And so, moral of the story is, don't get depressed when you see other people in our age bracket doing their thing. Like, congratulate them, pat them on their back, but focus on yourself and focus on what your path is. And so I think like the big like takeaway from like the work section of the book is that you are in control of your life, but you may not be in control of the pace that your life goes in. And remember that everyone's journey is different. social media makes that kind of difficult to remember. I think remembering that my path is going to be different from person B's is kind of difficult, but I'm really trying to get better with that. I really suck with comparison. I compare myself too often. It sucks so much, but I'm trying to do better. And eventually, I think once I move past this, I'll definitely like kind of talk more just about that and like how I was able to move past it. But for now, we're still comparing. So we don't really need to talk about that too much in detail. Okay, so now we're going to move into the second section of the book, which is about LOVEE and affection. Minus affection, just love. So this part of the book was super interesting. So the first chapter that we're going to talk about is called An Upmarket Conversation. And I enjoyed this section because, well, for multiple reasons. So I feel like society promotes a culture for 20 somethings that involves being single, living your best life, going out, and like avoiding commitments. And, not all of us are like that. And this section of the book talked about there's literally nothing wrong with being in serious relationships in your 20s. You don't have to be in a serious relationship, but if you do get into one, it's okay. You don't have to feel like, oh, I shouldn't be tied down right now. I need to be living my best life. I need to have a hot girl summer. Girl, if you want a hot girl summer, and you want to give up something that you have great going on right now, I mean, by all means, you do that. But if you are in a serious relationship and you're happy, you don't have to get out because you see everybody else getting out of those relationships. And I think this has always been like a really interesting thing for me because literally 90% of my friends are all single and, like living their single life. Wow. I've been in this same relationship since July of 2017. You know what I mean? So like, I'm always down to, go have fun, yada, yada, yada. But I also, I have a boyfriend. It's not like I have a husband at home, but like when you have a boyfriend, it's different. And I thought it was really, really interesting that the book talked about the average age for marriage for women is 26. And the average age for men is 28. And most adults just get married over the age of 25. And so I definitely think marriage can be kind of scary, like the thought of it. And especially since the divorce rate is around 40%. Like, what the heck? That's unbelievable. But I also think at the same time, it's one of the most beautiful things that you might ever experience. And I hope that I get married one day. I'm definitely not in a rush. Not today, not tomorrow, not next year, probably not the year after that. I think I personally have so much to learn and just so much growing to do before I can fully commit to a marriage. I have some things I just need to work on. And yeah, even though I'm not ready for marriage right now, eventually I do see myself getting married. I do see myself, living that married lifestyle. But if I don't get married, that's completely okay. Watch me not say this like 25 years from now, but I honestly think that everyone is not going to get married. I don't think everyone was created to get married at the end of the day. We can obviously tell that by like the population of men to women in the world. But no, seriously, I don't think that we were all created to get married. And that's totally okay. You don't have to be in a relationship in order to meet your life's purpose. There's so much that you can accomplish like by yourself, do your own thing. And I think you could definitely still have an amazing life. But I think, oh my goodness, marriage, that's so interesting. I feel like it'd actually be kind of cool to have like an episode with like a young couple and like I could talk to them about marriage because I just think it's so interesting. And I really couldn't imagine being married at this age, but I think I should definitely try to find a couple that is married at, at the age of 22 or whatever and see how it is for them. Okay, so now we're going to move to the cohabitation effect, which I think is one of the most memorable sections of the book. And basically, cohabitation, living together, sharing a space. I feel like more and more couples are moving in together. And if that's what you want to do, like totally like go for it. I'm not going to hold you back. I think for me personally, I don't want to move in with my boyfriend right now, and I really don't plan on living with him anytime soon. Probably not until we're married or like right before the marriage. I don't know. I haven't thought that far. But yeah, that's just not something I want to do. But I do have a lot of friends that, aren't interested to live with their partner or currently do live with their partner. And I know a lot of people argue, oh, it's important to see your partner and, their comfy zones and see how they live. But I also feel like you can do that without moving in with each other. Like, I personally visit my boyfriend all the time. So I have a really good understanding of how he lives and also like how we would live together in a shared space. And that experience really just reminds me that, yeah, I still have things I need to work on, when it comes to sharing the space, because I was the only child, or I am the only child. I've never had to share like a small space with someone. I think college I did, but this is different. Sharing a space with a college roommate and sharing a space with a boyfriend is just different. It's so different. Anyway, but Dr. Meg J, wrote a whole section about the cohabitation effect. And, just like to let you know, Dr. Meg J, nor I were not trying to judge anybody that does this. Again, I say if you want to do it, go for it. I totally understand why a lot of people do it, especially for like financial reasons. My boyfriend and I have joked around about how much money we would save if we literally just moved in with each other. And like basically, long story short, I would have my Tesla Model 3 in no time and I would be living my best life. But according to the book, it talks about how couples who live together first before they're married are actually less satisfied with their marriages and more likely to divorce than couples who do not. And this is referred to as the cohabitation effect by scientists. And that's according to the book, it's saying that's because they're sliding into a marriage, not deciding into a marriage. And sliding into a marriage is basically going into it out of convenience rather than actually making the firm decision, oh, I want to get married to this person. Now, again, don't get mad at me for saying this. I'm just quoting the book, saying what it says. But I thought that was really, really interesting. But, when you live with someone you're dating, it's almost as if your relationship is kind of locked in, especially if, you're both on the lease. And so sometimes you might be willing to stay in the relationship longer than you normally would because shoot, maybe you share a car note, the apartment rent, a dog, the grocery bills, the utility bills. And if you split up, all of that falls on you. And you could also easily argue that that happens in marriage too if you guys were to get a divorce. And obviously people are going to cohabitate, like there's no way like this there'll be a decrease over time, but there are a couple ways that the book suggests that you could do to work on avoiding the cohabitation effect. And one big thing is actually getting a clear understanding of each person's commitment level to the relationship. So, in one of the stories from the book, one of Dr. J's clients basically had this breakup with the boyfriend. And I think it was because the boyfriend wasn't really that committed to the relationship. And if the client would have known that beforehand, she would have never put herself in that position. So I think it's definitely important, to have that conversation with your partner like, hey, where do you see this relationship going? I'm in it like, for the long run. And, if they say, oh, I'm not thinking that far ahead, I don't know, blah, 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 blah. Maybe it's not best to move in. And I'm not saying that they have to say, I am going to marry you, because anybody can say that, or they could be just psycho and say that. So, use your judgment, but definitely have that conversation about your commitment level. And then Dr. J also suggests like spending time with each other, doing different activities outside of like sex and dating. So that could be traveling to a new place or playing games or building new hobbies, different things like that, just to really get to know each other outside of where you guys already know each other. And again, just use your wisdom when making the decision. If you're not interested in moving in with your partner and you really don't want to, don't do it. You can find roommates, you can find a cheaper apartment. There's always ways around it, but do not put yourself in a situation where you're unsure, because your happiness is more important than anything. And it's funny, I kind of think this section should have been before the cohabitation effect, but Dr. J talks about being in like with someone. And basically, relationships can't work unless you are in like. And by that, I mean you have to be alike in the ways that matter, and you have to genuinely like who your person is. That is so freaking important because, yes, opposites attract. But compatibility is so freaking important for a healthy and successful relationship. And I think that as time progresses, and I think that's something that I've really learned, while being in a relationship. Me and my boyfriend have been together for, I think, we just hit 3.5 years. Oh my God, that's so long. But just how important compatibility is. Me and my boyfriend, we're different in so many ways, but we're also alike in like these like small and funny and I kind of think important ways. And of course, we're still trying to navigate our relationship. And relationships take work. But I would definitely encourage you guys, if you are in a relationship or dating someone, like definitely take a step back, put on your goggles, and say, hey, what are the ways that we're alike? And then, do I genuinely like this person for who they are? Because that's so important. So, while you're in your 20s, pay attention to your partner's character, their personality, their values. Because if you're not compatible now, girl, you will not magically become compatible later. That's just not how it works. So, the moral of the story for the love section of the podcast is basically date who you want to date. If you are dating seriously, think about what you value in a person, think about your compatibility with this person, and just use your wisdom when making decisions. If you do move in together, make sure that you are both equally committed to the relationship and that you could actually see this relationship going somewhere. I wouldn't say just do it out of convenience. I think it's best when you are fully committed to the relationship and you see it going somewhere. But at the same time, if you don't want to live with your partner, let them know. That's completely okay. And they should not shame you for it. If they do, that's kind of weird. Okay, now we're moving on to the very last section called the body and the brain. So she had a chapter called Forward Thinking. And I remember, like, literally ever since I was a kid, my mom would always remind me, Ariane, your brain won't be fully developed until after you're 25. And I mean, she was kind of right, though. Our frontal lobe isn't fully developed until sometime between the age of 20 and 30. And the frontal lobe is where a lot of your forward thinking takes place. Thinking about, how your actions now affect the future. Just think about the future. And that's probably why, as young adults don't do a lot of forward thinking. And I'll be honest, I personally don't. I genuinely don't like thinking about where I'll be in the next 5 to 10 years. That just gives me anxiety and a headache. And I feel like school teaches us to solve problems in a black and white way. There's a correct answer, there's a theory for this, there's a certain way to answer it. But whether you like it or not, school has trained us to think a certain way. But with adulting, everything is not and will not be black and white. We're going to have so many different decisions to ponder with while adulting that will require forward thinking. And that just doesn't happen naturally. We actually have to place ourselves in learning environments where we can see and figure out how to work through conflicts at work or choosing a life partner or figuring out, the best place for us to live at this point in time of our lives. And, it's time for us to get out there and actually get busy. And I'm really trying to work through the typical way of school because with school, you always knew what was next. I knew there was 10th grade after ninth grade. I knew I was going to college after high school. I knew after my freshman year, I would have harder classes my sophomore year. But in the real world, without school, I know a lot of you guys may be in grad school or whatever, but there's not, I don't know what's around the corner. You know, I'm in a rotational program, so I know, okay, in 6 months, I'll be on a new team. And then a year from that, I'll be on a new team again. But I don't know what team I'm going to be on in 6 months. I don't know where I don't know where I'll be living in 6 months. So I'm trying to do a lot more forward thinking, and it's kind of hard to place myself in a new learning environment now, but I've really been trying to educate myself through just articles and YouTube videos that, could help me. And also talking with new people, I think that's been a plus during this weird pandemic time, is that I've been able to talk to so many different people that I don't know that I would have met if, I wasn't sitting at home in my childhood bedroom. So again, get out there, get busy. Let's do some forward thinking. Remember that all the decisions you make now will affect you in the future. So be smart with your decisions. Have fun with them though. But yeah, let's get out there and get busy. And then the last chapter that I want to talk about in the book is getting along and getting ahead. And I'm sure we all knew this, but just in case you didn't, did you know that your 20s are the best time in your life to actually make a change in your life? So, our 20s, like I said, they're transformative years. A lot of things are going to happen. So, you're already destined to change naturally, because early 20s are a transitional period. But it's also the best time for you to manually make a change as well. And I think one of the best ways to make a change in your life is to actually set achievable goals. I'm going to say it again. Actually set achievable goals. And these goals can be professional, spiritual, personal, social, whatever you want it to be. And of course, it's great to set goals, but now, as in right now, as soon as this podcast ends, it's the time for you to actually work towards them. And so that's something I really want to work on this year. I actually created like goals, and I've done that in the past, but they were never like for real. But this year, I actually have goals. I actually put time and thought and effort into my vision board, and I'm optimistic that I can achieve these goals this year. And obviously, there's going to be different hurdles, probably so many freaking hurdles that are going to try and stop me from reaching my goals. But I think I can definitely do it. I am a strong Black woman who may cry and get overwhelmed sometimes, but I know that I can do it. And I know that you guys can do it too. Even though I don't know who's listening to this podcast, I believe that we all have it in us to persevere through anything. And the book says that positive personality changes come from getting along and getting ahead, which is a phrase that apparently researchers have coined. So just know this: if you continue to put off the responsibilities and the tasks and the goals that you created that go along with adulting or adulthood, you will literally never feel better. You actually have to invest in your adulting experience. Don't let your 20s go by and you realize that you accomplished absolutely nothing and you're still where you were when you graduated from college. And again, remember, our paths are all different. So my success, my getting along and getting ahead is going to look different from your getting along and getting ahead, Tommy. Your getting along and getting ahead is going to look different from Tina's getting along and getting ahead. But just, it's really important for you to be in tune with what you want and what you want to accomplish. Whew. I'm getting off my soapbox now. But the book ends with Dr. J basically saying, and I'm quoting her, "The future isn't written in the stars. There are no guarantees. So claim your adulthood. Be intentional. Get to work. Pick your family. Do the math. Make your own certainty. Don't be defined by what you didn't know or didn't do. You are deciding your life right now." Literally love that. I want a t-shirt that says that. That's so freaking important. And I love that I love it all. Just, there are no guarantees. So claim your adulthood. Be intentional. Get to work. Go ahead, pick your family. Do the math. Make your own certainty. Don't be defined by what you didn't know or didn't do. AKA, it's up to you to go out there and figure out how to make a freaking doctor's appointment. And can I just say this? Today, y'all, I was really struggling. I got a cavity filling. They did the little insurance claim thing. I had no idea how to go off and pay for it. I kept talking to my mom about it. But you know what I did today? I contacted them and I figured out how I could pay for my cavity filling. And I did that. And now I know how to handle my insurance. Kind of. I'm I'm in a better spot than I was 3 days ago when I was freaking out about how to pay for the freaking cavity filling. Anyway, you are deciding your life right now. Make the most out of it. Do what you need to do. And can I read it to y'all one more time? The future isn't written in the stars. There are no guarantees. So claim your adulthood. Be intentional. Get to work. Pick your family. Do the math. Make your own certainty. Don't be defined by what you didn't know or didn't do. You are deciding your life right now. So, guys, I hope that you guys feel motivated. I hope you took notes during this episode, and I hope that you are going to make a positive change in your life to make the 20s the best years of your life, even though there are going to be obstacles thrown your way. We're all in an obstacle right now, this pandemic. This is huge. We don't know when or if we're ever going to get out of it. I'm optimistic that I can still make the most out of my life, sitting in my childhood bedroom, wearing a mask when I leave the house, dealing with all the things I have going on in my personal life. And I'm hopeful that you can do the same thing with your personal set of circumstances. So overall, my lasting thoughts, this was definitely a good read. I suggest it for all recent college graduates and young adults under the age of 30. This book really inspired me to take action in my 20s and not make excuses. Y'all know, like that commercial that's like, are you sitting on the couch watching life pass you by? If that's you, read that book. Get inspired. And there's actually a book really similar to this. I read it for my senior seminar class. It's called After College something something by like Erica Wrights. I'll have it in the episode description. It was really, really good. And if you're a person of faith, I think you'll really enjoy it because it talks about, the different things that go along with living a faith-based life. What? I'm sorry. That was just funny coming out of my mouth. It's a really, really good book. I suggest reading that as well. I think there are actually some ways that I like that book a little bit more than The Defining Decade. But if I decide to do an episode about that, you guys will figure out why. But yeah, y'all, I'm like fired up. I'm ready to go like write down my goals for tomorrow so that I can reach my goals for this year. I hope you guys feel the same way. Again, this episode was about The Defining Decade by Dr. Meg J. Why your 20s matter and how to make the most of them now. If you're not following the Graduated and Grown podcast on Instagram, go check us out at Graduated and Grown. Go check out our content. If you haven't listened to the past episodes, go check those out. And I really want to know what you guys would like to hear in some future episodes. So DM your girl. Let me know. Be sure to rate this podcast. I love 5 stars, but rate it whatever you think it is. And I will talk to you guys next week. Peace out. Have a great week. Do your thing. Get to work. Pick your family. Just kidding. I'm not going to repeat that again. But do your thing this week, y'all. I really want to encourage you. Go after your goals. Make this a good week. Don't let life pass you by. And make the most out of your freaking 20s. All right, y'all. It was your girl, Ariane, and I'm talking to y'all next week. Peace. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Graduated and Grown podcast. I appreciate you so, so much. If you haven't already, be sure to rate this podcast 5 stars and subscribe to the podcast so you can get a notification every single time a new episode is posted each week. Also, don't forget to follow our Instagram at Graduated and Grown so you can learn a little bit more about our guests, about our topics, get some resources, and provide some feedback and or episode ideas for the podcast. All right, y'all. It was your host, Ariane, and I'll talk with you all next week.